Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Dungeon Talks, the weekly show that is a companion show with Dungeon Nytes. Watch the sessions on Saturday. We come talk about them here on Wednesday. Tonight, we have with us, for the first time, Cataract, a.k.a. Bimir, and we welcome back Mr. Gage Economy. Gage Economy. Do you want to be a Mr. Gage Economy? Leif.
Sure, we can talk about economy action D&D later. That's fine.
Yes, economy action in D&D. Like, how much will the tavern make if it were to make money?
Or action economy.
That's a different kind of economy, but yeah, that works.
Yeah. We can talk about level 6 economy too. We can talk about that. That'll be fun.
Oof. Oof.
Anyway,
Too soon. I'm
just very excited you guys are here. It's another wonderful week. We had a fantastic cause rude. This show is for you, community. This is your chance to ask us questions. You leading up to the show, you can tweet us at AskDN, the hashtag, or you can post in Discord, or you can just be here live on Wednesday nights around 11 p.m. Eastern and give us your cues, and we'll give you some A's. That said, let's get started. So, wow. Chat's a little rowdy tonight. People that like their DM, wow, love it. Anyway, so, Kat, welcome. It's your first day here. It's your first time.
Mm-hmm. So it is.
How have you been? How has all the things been?
Good, I suppose. Without getting into the nitty-gritty.
So I'm just going to dive right in because I'm going to give you the barrage. So some of the original questions that we've had for the last couple weeks, just everybody's trying to get to know everybody for the first time, is what got you into D&D? Like, why do you do the D&D that you do?
I was invited. Like, I always kind of thought that I would enjoy it, but I was invited by a friend of mine to join a game, and we started playing 3.5 an undisclosed number of years ago, and and I've actually been playing with that group ever since, and this is actually one of the first games I've played outside of it. It's not pretty much the only game outside of that group that I've played so far, but we've done a lot of D&D at that group and other games. And we've played Dungeons and Dragons, Iron Kingdoms, White Wolf games.
So you are by
all
far
over the place. Pathfinder,
the most experienced, I think, of all of us in terms of the D&Ds.
I don't know. It's probably between me and Faded or Cosbane, but
very experienced. Well, I think from a consistency perspective, I think you've been playing fairly consistently. Now,
okay.
Help me remember. So you've played. Have you ever DM'd though?
No.
That's right. Why have you never DM'd?
You
have a firm grasp of the rules.
There's various reasons, but mostly time.
That's fair.
And basically, so we have a very good DM in my other group, and that usually does all the DMing, and other people in the group have run games and stuff, but we've all kind of agreed that he makes a much better DM than player, because as a player he generally makes assholes.
Spill the tea. What's this about?
But no, he's a good guy, but he's definitely got the passion for doing it. Like, he was an English major, and so he's got that kind of story.
So he majored in
background.
D&D. I get it.
Yeah, basically. So, but
it's okay, Gage. I'm a business major. I didn't major in anything either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a liberal studies major with an emphasis in psychology.
Well, at least you have the psych.
I'm not doing anything in psychology.
fair. It's life.
I'm a business major with a math minor, and I do computer programming. So,
Hey, computer programming takes math. Somewhat. Depending on
I
if you're
mean,
programming
depends on what you're
computers.
doing. I'm not doing anything that requires math.
Lucky
So,
you.
at
Anyway,
least not from existential.
so tell me about Bimir as a character. What was the kind of impetus of the creation of Bimir?
Well, I wanted to like the reason. Well, I went with Bimir as like a bard, and a high charisma character because I wasn't like it sounded like there was a lot like people that hadn't played before, and so generally you want to have um like somebody that knows what they're doing some social interactions like and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to be able to take the lead on that if I had to, or if I mean, Leif ended up being a high charisma character too, so I didn't have to necessarily shoulder that whole burden. But I kind of thought that we would need somebody that had that kind of ability.
Okay.
Also, they're not quite as strong as in combat, so a lot of times, like people, like basically, I like creating characters that fit parties well. So basically, I created a support character that could take a charisma role and do some of the RP until people got used to it.
Like swoon all the ladies of the
But
town?
it turns out that most of the people were really okay with it, so I probably would have been just fine playing whatever.
I like you as a
So,
bard, personally. I think it's fun.
yeah, I always thought it'd be fun to play a bard too. I mean, it's not like I only picked it because for other people. I always wanted to play a bard too. I had one character idea that was a bard, thief, arcane trickster, but it was for a different game with some custom kind of nobility classes built in. So it was kind of neat.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Like additional layers built in?
Yeah, well,
Is it a
I
different
mean,
system?
no, well, okay, I could go into it, but it would probably take a little bit to explain.
Well, no, I'm just curious. It sounds
So,
interesting.
Basically, this was a 3.5 game,
Okay.
and 3.5 had very different it had very interesting multi-class rules. So basically, the DM created a he created noble houses that you could take as that you had to choose your noble level at character creation, but
Okay.
that noble level you could take as levels in the nobility class,
Okay.
and that nobility class had its own advantages and
Oh, so it's almost like
levels and
Piety
that
and
kind of
Theros.
stuff.
Yeah. I got you. That makes
Maybe I don't
sense.
know. I haven't read the Theros stuff that much, to be honest.
Piety and Theros is basically as you do things for a deity in Theros, then you are awarded piety. And as your piety gets to certain levels, then you unlock certain abilities. So
Well, I mean, kind of like that, but this was actually like a class level. So it was you take a level in
oh.
Varendell, or you take a level in
So you like
Candor.
multi-class into that that's interesting.
Yeah, and that was actually my first game, was the game where he did that. And I ended up playing a full-blood noble of the house that was built around strength, and I ended up taking a class that was called the War Hulk. And if you're familiar with 3.5, basically if you're playing a melee character, every level gives you a +1 to your base attack bonus.
Okay.
Because it's scaled a little differently than 5 does. But instead of giving you a +1 base attack bonus, the War Hulk class just gave you +2 strength. So instead of your base attack score would go up because your strength went up, but you also were just stronger.
Right.
So I had an ungodly amount of strength, and
You're Godorunk with gauntlets breaking Leif in half. Yeah, I got you.
yeah, it was pretty ridiculous in the end. So,
That
and
sounds fun.
that character ended up um he ended up echoing through a lot of time. Like the Wi-Fi password on my DM's router is related to my character from that game.
He's everlasting.
So it was fun. It was an
So
interesting concept.
it is an interesting concept. I'm trying to absorb all these different ideas and concepts that I keep kind of coming in contact with to try and continue to boost, my understanding of the game and what's possible, because the reality is almost anything's possible. It's just so interesting to hear how people do those different types of things. So let's cut to the session. Last week's session. There was a lot of we basically had a lot of RP, right? Because we've been in transition from one module. We beat the big bad. Now we're kind of prepping Phandalin as a town, and a bunch of stuff is kind of going on. We've kind of got this Rydoth arc in the background where he's kind of becoming slowly frozen by this dragon ice, and we're trying to find a cure. And that has been a lot of fun, I think, because it's not this active pressing issue, because you have a long time before it's going to be covered in ice, let's be frank. But you guys are slowly putting a little bit of pressure on, yourselves to get that done. And Gage, that kind of hit Leif a little bit more this week, right? You're continuing to work through your abilities, and some of those scenes are increasingly fun for me to watch, where to just watch how they play out, where you're trying to use various magical abilities. And this week, Leif actually was able to pull some stuff off. He actually did pretty well. How was that kind of experience for Leif this week?
I mean, things are working. It's like Anakin from Phantom Menace. It's working. Just like that's kind of like his internal monologue to that. So, I mean, it's nice that like him and Bimir kind of get to work through like some kind of like common thing, because they really haven't yet. So being able to be like magic. I mean, they both know magic. Ashin has, I would say, skills that are kind of imbued with like hunter magic, which is, I'm honestly I'm not familiar enough with the ranger to guess what those are. And then druid spells are a little bit different, I feel like, than like full spell casting like that. So no, it's interesting. So it was kind of nice to actually have some spells work and then other spells not, like darkness.
I forgot about that. That was great. That was so good. But like you said, I think it's cool that you guys are. I had asked you behind the scenes, right, to try and find ways for your characters to come together a little bit more. And I think that you guys have slowly been doing that, either consciously or subconsciously, kind of taking advantage of those moments. And I thought that was actually really nice for Bimir to kind of step up and say, "Hey, I'll stick with you, Leif. Let's go back here. Let's try this stuff out. Let's try and work through some of this stuff. You got a couple spells in you?" And I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." Here we go.
Yeah, I still did.
Yep.
It was cool. How is that from Bimir's kind of internal perspective, seeing Leif go through this stuff? I mean, if you think about Bimir, he's got a guy who goes into murderous fits. He now has a sorcerer friend whose magic is broken, right?
Now.
Yeah.
For now.
Basically everything is going contrary to what he learned in school, which is exactly what happens to anybody that goes into the real world after spending time in school, especially college. Because you come out of college thinking, oh, you're the bee's knees, you know all this shit, and then you get into the real world and it's just like, oh,
You know
Screw
nothing,
you.
Jon Snow. Yep.
This is not how things work. But so he's dealing with orcs that don't just blindly kill things. He's, a sorcerer that loses its magic, and a warlock that changes his whole being. A ladrin that can't go back to the Feywild, and a ranger that has basically gone nuts, and devoted himself to revenge. So it's just kind of like, oh well, here's reality.
And you picked up a goblin companion.
Yeah, and we have a goblin that's a companion. It's just a whole new world for Bimir. He's just living the dream.
I think some of the fun moments looking at Bimir's character are when, because I forget, right? Like I don't actively think of you guys as your class. I think of you as characters, and so much of that revolves just around your personality and not so much what type of character you are. And so there's so many moments, actually not so many, but there's been a few moments lately where Bimir kind of naturally steps into a perceived role, right? Like, hey, we're going to go and announce the tavern, right? And Bimir's like,
This is my
moment. What is that like for him?
I mean, like with everything else that happens, like he has to kind of go back to those touchstones where that's basically his wheelhouse. Like him giving speeches is just like exactly what he always wanted to do. Getting up on stage and outperforming anybody else that's in the room is, it's what he was born to do in his mind. So, just basically anything that inflates his own ego, he's going to try to do to the best of his ability, just because that's what he grew up to do. His dad was a bard and he's a bard, and he basically wanted to do everything as good as his dad, if not better.
See, and that's what's kind of interesting is I don't get that sense from Bimir when those moments aren't around. It's almost like you flip a switch. And I know what that's like, right? Especially being a content creator. It's not like you're a different person, but that you turn on that side of you. Or if you're playing sports, right? Like I used to communicate that whenever you go on a football field, at least for me, when I put my helmet on, I'm not me anymore. Like I'm machine robot lineman that must go and destroy opponent, right? Like that is that's the trigger, right? You go into a different place in your head, and it's like you see Bimir as this kind of more compassionate person, very cerebral. You're analytical in how you're trying to approach various situations, and then there's just these random moments where it's just like, people of Phandalin, and you're just like, what the hell? Who the hell is this guy? Like, what is this? But I think it's great.
Yeah, and a lot of that's me coming through, just because I'm more of a, like, whenever I play games, I really like the tactical aspect of things, so that's where that comes from. But I think it also kind of, because if you don't know, and most of you probably don't know a lot of Bimir's backstory, his dad has disappeared. Mm-hmm. And because he was involved in an organization called the Harpers. And the Harpers, in turn, once his dad disappeared, ended up taking care of a lot of the things that his family needed and that kind of thing. Made sure that he could keep, they could keep going. And so Bimir has, he still has that, fun, I'm a bard kind of side, but he also has this, like a kind of responsibility that he feels that, he needs to take up that more serious side that his father did too.
Yeah.
And kind of do what he can to help people since he needed it and got it himself. So that's kind of, his, like, it's kind of both sides where he'd like to just be the carefree and happy-go-lucky bard, but then reality comes along and says, hey, there's stuff that you have the power to fix and you need to do it, because there's not necessarily anybody else that's going to.
So Gage, to come back to you, your patron was getting a little heckly in your head this last episode too. Little couple moments coming through and giving you some little jabs there and there. What is Leif's general sense of kind of all the stuff that is happening to him now? I mean, you've had essentially a couple days to absorb this, right? Like you had that initial day happen. Magic went super haywire. You felt a little better. You got a long rest. Like, where are you coming to terms with where you're at right now?
I mean, I think he kind of accepted it when he first, maybe didn't fully understand it, but accepted it when he made the pact originally. And then as that kind of like didn't really happen, like there wasn't like a lot of communication on that part. And now it's like more, it's just like, don't have warlock magic anymore, but now I can do fire and it's weird. And now I have a more active patron talking to me. And Leif doesn't know if he's good, bad, neutral, whatever. And I mean, that's what usually Hexblades tend to be, more neutral. So, but that's whatever you decide he is.
But you, you though, as a character, more go with the flow. Do you feel like Leif wants more interaction from his patron? Like, do you feel like he's becoming more hungry for that knowledge, or do you feel like he's still like kind of like, okay, we've had this interaction, go away? Like,
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's more so like still some wariness about it, because Leif, at least Leif understands before when I've mentioned this, that the patrons never lied to him, but also the patron definitely has a sadistic side. So it's definitely like a little bit of wariness that but I think he wants to understand the patron, and also that's a gateway to the Shadowfell, which is where I'm not going to say cursed, but basically where his magic comes from.
right.
So it's a gateway there.
So we had a thing happen this week, and the thing was regarding a windmill. And now I'm going to be very honest with you guys. When I said, hey, Asteria, do a perception check, there's a windmill, I fully expected you guys to just go right to the windmill. And when you guys took your time and kind of threw me for a loop a little bit, I was like, okay, I guess we're going here.
Hi.
Yeah, it was totally fine. The funny, when we finally got to that kind of part in that whole encounter, we ended up having a lot of discussion around this after the session. But from Leif's perspective, how do you feel like that encounter is going? Because I guess it's still in flux.
Leif thinks it's going better than expected, worse than he hoped. Obviously, I think he's still a little unsure about casting any magic. He feels better, but at the same time, like even the day before, I mean, spells still went a little wrong. So I think one, he's a little wary of casting any spells.
Sure.
And then two, he was hoping that they wouldn't have to harm the Manticore at all. And they ended up having to take the feigns that they needed without killing the Manticore. So like I said, better than expected, because he honestly was probably expecting them just to kill the Manticore before that. But worse than he hoped, hoping they didn't have to hurt them. So.
I know it's coming. How does Bimir feel about this interaction?
Let's just say Bimir continues to be surprised by Leif's naivete. Like, because Bimir comes, he's been to college. Like he's had learning shoved at him and stories told at him of, you know, mythical creatures and, you know, orc invasions and goblin ransackings and all this stuff. So like the idea that something like as monstrous as a manticore could be reasoned with and you know just like parlayed with without any kind of repercussions is just completely mind-blowing to him. So it's always an interesting experience from his point of view, but at the same time it's more like, here we go again, we're gonna try and talk to this thing that's probably going to turn around and murder us again. Or, you know, like the whole manticore thing, we went to go save this woman who was about to be killed by it, and now we're trying to...
You didn't know what you were going to find, and then you heard a woman.
Well, okay, first of all, she said that there was a woman that was in trouble. Like Mysteria said that there was a woman that was in trouble that we needed to rescue.
Oh, that's true. She did.
And the monster was beating down the door and the woman was crying for help. So, you know,
I did nudge that along. I forgot about that too.
To the rescue.
A little bit of a headache. Yeah.
So, but you know, I don't know, it's just kind of, it's a fresh perspective to Bimir to see all this stuff happen the way it has. And yeah. You know, so that's, I think after this encounter's over, there will probably be a longer conversation about it that we can have in character. And I don't know if we want to go too far down that road tonight, just because, you know, spoilers. So
Leif would like to remind Bimir that the dragon thing was the party's fault.
Okay.
It's true.
That one actually went very well. Didn't get charmed. Had a nice conversation. Party still wants to kill dragon and wouldn't leave.
I mean, you say that it was not Leif's fault, but Leif also didn't tell the party what he was doing when he went in there.
But he did when he came back.
He said, I talked to the dragon. We should leave.
He said, trust me, Leif, we trust you. Talked to dragon, came back. Hey, we need to leave because dragon still here and let's talk about stuff. But no, we must kill thing. But no longer trust Leif. And then we had an encounter. Yes, corrupt, we know. Godoruk was too afraid of the dragon to kill it.
Nothing wrong with that. Godoruk knows his limitations. Godoruk says, F this S summon. No,
yeah.
I think it's part of the debrief we had, and I don't want to go too far into it because you said it still has to play out. But there was a lot of really good conversation around like the plausibility of the encounter from a kind of classical understanding of D&D characters and monsters and things, which I thought was really interesting. Because again, for me, this is all new. And so this is something that's come up between us as kind of a group before, that there's certain times where monsters just have to be monsters, right? And like not everything has a bleeding heart to it. And being an evil monstrosity, the manticore is just a manticore. It is a sentient monster. Yes, you can talk to it, but it's still an evil creature. And so we had a long talk about the believability that this whole scenario could happen. And when you break it down, a lot of stuff went right for it to happen. Because actually, I think, didn't you get stuck in the leg off the bat with a spike?
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got spiked right off the bat with one of the tail spikes. So
yeah, he did.
So the prick already got you, right? Like he came out swinging. He was not there for fun and games. But I think to get to where we got to go, there was crazy perceptions with this, I think it was a crazy persuasion check with disadvantage. Then we had some tenuous food getting by the party, and we left off with Ashin's Chevrash mark kind of trying to take over and kill the beast. So we'll find out what happens last week. But I think the cool thing for me in that conversation was understanding kind of a balance, right? And I guess this isn't as much of a question for you guys. This is kind of just a talking point. Is still being new as a DM, there's things that I'm doing instinctively that aren't necessarily, I don't want to say the right way to do them, because I understand I'm the DM, I can do what I want, but I don't like that excuse as like a catch-all for everything, right? I want to do things right and have them play out the way that they should. And when we go back and look at the scenario, it very much still could have gone the same way, but things like breaking down for RP and then not being clear on initiative and stuff like that, this situation had the potential to go very differently if Asteria would have just continued attacking, right? And so that was something that I think was an interesting takeaway for me, is if you go back and listen to that session where I was like, hey, Leif persuaded the beast, like you got the role, and then I communicated that, hey, the beast goes down to the ground to talk, when in reality, it wasn't the beast's turn, so it didn't have the movement to be able to do so. Technically, we needed to wait for Asteria to decide what she was going to do before the beast had a chance to act. And so, kind of thinking back on that whole scenario, one of the questions I asked you guys that night, and the question I'm going to ask you here is, what do you think are good ways to communicate more effectively that things work? You know what I mean? Like, I guess is a
outside
good
of just the outside player metagaming role, more so like what the NPC is responding to.
You wanted to persuade the Manticore
Yeah.
to talk with you, to parlay, right? And so you rolled, I think it was like a 19...
24 and 21.
Yeah, 24 to 21. It's on a disadvantage. And I was like, okay, we're talking to the Manticore now. And so the Manticore is persuaded. And then what do? It's up in the air. How would you communicate that the Manticore, that the parlay took hold, per se?
Do you want to talk on that first, Kara? Because I know you already mentioned it in the debrief.
Well, just my thoughts about it are generally, because the whole thing was that we were in the middle of combat, right? And so anything that happens outside of a character's turn has got to be pretty quick, because you already have like all of the character's actions tied up in their turn. So so kind of like, from my point of view, everybody can see that, like, and part of it's through metagaming, but also part of it could just be that the description that whoever provides is super effective, and not only the Manticore but everybody else knows that, because it's not just Leif talking to the Manticore, it's Leif talking with everybody there in front of them, and the Manticore. So everybody knows how effective Leif's argument is from his impetus that he puts into it, and then whatever the Manticore's reaction is, he can have like an instant stance change or something, or an eyebrows raised type reaction. But part of and this is kind of the point I was making after the game, was that part of the interesting part of what happens is how everybody interprets it whenever things are heated in the moment of combat. So, when it does become Kasa's turn or whatever, then she's got to make that decision. Does she think that Leif's does she think that Leif's plea was sincere or believed enough to warrant stopping combat, or did she think that it doesn't really matter. We should just kill this thing before it hurts more people or something. You know, it's one of the things that you get into in a combat situation that you don't really see when you're just doing social type interactions. So
Right. The kind of hurried pace, right?
Yeah.
That tension is
Right.
there where it's not there normally.
I definitely I agree with Kat on this. I mean, I definitely think that as we did talk about, the Manticore basically flying down may have been too much for an in combat
Sure.
scenario. So I mean, in ways that you could always maybe show that as one, yeah, you can describe it. Like, yeah, like I rolled a 21 and 24. Like obviously, that's persuasive from what I did. And then, it could be maybe before the Manticore's tail was in an offensive position and it just drops. Like that's a way to kind of show that like it's no longer as hostile. Same with like someone who's humanoid. They might like lower their sword. Like something that just shows like a de-escalation can
Sure.
always be really small things that can happen in a matter of a second.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be super evident either. I mean, there are things that like their players or characters have insight ability. So if they are not sure how the situation's going, that's what insight's there for. So you can roll insight and figure out, okay, what is my character's impression of what's going on, and the accuracy of that is determined by the
by the dice.
By the dice.
So rolling insight an action, or how's that handled in combat?
Generally any skill check, if it's not a pose check, is an action on your part. So it would have cost her an action, but once she takes that action, she can pass on what she gets from it to everybody else, and they can act on it accordingly, and that kind of stuff.
Sorry, I'm reading in chat. So one of our resident also DMs, Geigen, so stuff like that, I always enjoy spinning the story such that, for example, if it's someone else's turn, you have that person notice a change after the persuasion and ends up pulling back for a moment. Then ask the player if they want to stand down or not. If they do, the combat ends for a moment and then full action takes place and talks happen, etc. See, that's good. In the moment, what I was thinking was, okay, the persuasion worked, the Manticore's done fighting. You basically had already beat the living piss out of the thing, and it was just like, I'm done. Like, okay, let's talk, because this ain't gonna end well for me. Is essentially what the persuasion was, right? And so I was just trying to communicate that by being on the ground. In my head, I wasn't necessarily thinking, hey, this is breaking combat, right? For me, I was just like, this is just saying that the persuasion worked. That said, it was totally part of our discussion, which I really appreciated, was that Kaz communicated, well, but that changed things for her in terms of how she saw the situation, because now this beast was between her and Leif. So she felt a certain way about potentially attacking it further. Instead of having the agency to do that insight check or to make the decision to let it ride and see what the Manticore did, she just decided to stand down. Full well. Oh, I mean, it was basically a one shot from her with just about anything. So it definitely had some kind of effect. And I guess, again, for me, I don't want to take away that player agency. Even if it resulted in a cool RP, I don't want to take that away from us to be able to do that. Because as we discussed, every character has its own motivation. Leif really wants to try and talk to it because he just doesn't want to kill the thing. Everybody else is like, it's an evil creature, kill it! Right?
Yeah.
Did you want to touch on that for Leif? Or because his viewpoint on
please.
evil creatures is definitely different in the party.
Yeah, tell us about that, because this, again, dragons, you're like, dragon, be my friend. And now you're like, Manticore, we don't have to kill you. And everybody else is like, kill all the things.
So I guess to talk about the other party's composition, I mean, Godoruk just likes to fight things. I mean, if you can basically say, well, we shouldn't, he's like, Okay, that's a good reason based on whatever reason you give. Ashin and Bamir definitely have more of a set way of thinking on it's evil. You can't let it terrorize things. You need to get rid of it. And then Asteria's a druid, but also has a very, but her background, the Feywild, definitely has like she can see what damages evil things can do,
Sure.
and that's a way to preserve life through her. Um, Leif's experience is he's a changeling. So changelings are notoriously known for not being trusted due to the fact that they can change to be anyone. So Leif's kind of one, also he was background stuff with Shadowfell, also kind of made him a little more of an outcast. And his mindset's always been you can't judge something based on how it was born or what it is. So even though someone's like, oh, it's a dragon, it's a green dragon, must be evil, or hey, it's a manticore, must be evil, his mindset is, but it's still a sentient living thing. They all have choices to not be evil. So his is give it the benefit of the doubt, but still be prepared. Like Leif wasn't really too concerned about getting hurt going up to the manticore, mainly because now he's like, well, I've got shield now. I can do that with my staff. Like Bamir got hit with a thing, and then even if that AC were to, I think, hit Bamir, he could have just cast shield and not taken the damage anyway.
Right.
So I mean, whenever he goes into the situation, he always has a backup. Like even with the dragon, his thought is, worst case scenario, I can Misty Step. Um, like he's always has that planned in his head if things go bad, but he's not just like, oh, let's just go wander in and just hope for the best. He plans it out to a certain extent and then is hoping that it diffused non-violently to the most part.
But Leif doesn't communicate that plan to the party.
Not very well.
Not that they ask, to be fair.
And he does mention it. Like he says he wants to talk to the manticore or he does want to talk to the dragon. And for some reason, that's usually just shut down very fast. Whether that's good or bad, but the party just
dragon.
Exactly.
Evil.
But Leif is still like, well, you haven't given me a good reason why to do this other than you're just saying the thing's evil without knowing it. So Leif doesn't take that as it is.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's very true. I think the dragon was we asked you what you wanted to do and you said trust me and didn't tell anybody. And then I don't think we had time to really talk about what we were going to do with the manticore specifically. Like we know, like you said, you wanted to talk to it and try and ask it for its teeth. Just to give us his teeth. And we were all very skeptical of that. But then when we found out it was attacking a woman, I think that it was pretty. My guess is that everybody, because this is what I kind of thought, was that okay, we need to kill this thing before it hurts this woman. So
Leif, for both, I can talk about both of those. The one for the dragon kind of got harder to talk about after we just had the event with Ashin.
Sure.
That definitely made it thought-wise not as clear. He's just like, he still had the thought he needs to talk to the dragon to kind of just not have the party get into a situation that would be fighting it in a really bad space that it happened anyway. Yep. But obviously that was more so just trust me on this. We just need to talk to it first. And then after it went well, it kind of went bad. And then the other thing was for the manticore, we'd gotten to a place where you had basically almost killed the thing. Woman is still safe in a windmill. Leif's mindset is this is actually probably a really good time to dissuade it because it's at its most vulnerable point.
Sure.
Which is more of just on the fly thing. When he did mention when the woman was screaming, I guess we're not going to talk to it now. And he does mention that kind of in passing as we're coming up. If you go back on the VOD for it. But then when he got to that point, when it came around his turn and we were at that point, it kind of like changed, like, actually, this might be a good time to do so. So, I mean, he did have like, when she was being attacked, like obviously that woman's safety was paramount to him. And then after the situation's different and she is safe technically. And obviously the manticore isn't really a threat to us. And at that point, he wasn't really worried.
So I'm gonna punch this back to Bimir. when you see this again, all procedural stuff aside, when Bimir sees this Manticore fly down and basically start to talk, what's going through Bimir's head? Because I just imagine like just the jaw drop of like, huh?
He was so excited. He's like getting a show. She had popcorn for it.
Oh, well, okay. So the first thought was, oh, he's not actually gonna try this, and then, oh shit, that actually worked. and then it was like, okay, well, this is gonna go really well until he has to ask it to give it teeth up. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go make sure that this woman we're supposed to be saving is okay, and then we're just gonna grab some popcorn and sit back and wait for the moment.
Bimir always
and
making
then
sure the
be
women
ready.
are okay.
Then, hey, it's important.
For Asteria.
It's Bard's dear.
Hey,
Bard's duty.
Asteria can turn into a bear, okay? She can handle herself just fine. And Bimir's done his fair share of saving Asteria's hide, okay?
It's fair. Was that a wild shape joke or hide?
Yeah.
Okay.
But also, it seems like there's a thing going on between them and Fate and between Asteria and Ashin that he is not going to get in the middle of. So
You already tried to
plus
punch
if
him in the
we're
face once for
if
nothing.
we're working together, Bimir has learned that you don't stick your pen in the company ink. So
Fair.
Yeah, Leif feels that for Halio too. No worries.
yeah. So
She was just trying to have a good time.
Bill his employer.
No, it's fine. That was fun. And we talked about that before too. The awkward tension of that scene was great. So, again, it's one of those things we've talked about a little bit. Like you learn about these things in school, and then all of a sudden these things happen in real life, and I just, Peter's like, what? Like, is this really happening? And then you get it food, and I'm gonna admit I was confused because you kind of like you get it food, you give it food, it starts to go away. I'm like, you ain't got no teeth yet.
yeah, that's what I was like.
Yep.
Well, you're
No,
gonna
I
give
know.
it the food before we get the teeth.
Point of order.
Yeah, but
You ain't got no teeth. It's
Yep.
in the air. It's flying away. You're like, pardon? We also need your teeth.
Leif was really banking on that. Hopefully, it has a baby manticore teeth from the manticore tooth fairy.
I was like, he started talking about the baby manticore teeth, and I was like, here he goes. Here we go.
Hey, I'll meet you a little pouch here. Baby manticore teeth. Of course, I always keep my spare set.
You
I
silly
can
goose.
be your tooth fairy.
It was under the hay pillow.
Yeah.
Oh, I always keep it right here under my lucky wing.
No. Like he does. Like, no.
So if
He's
you're
like,
attached to your teeth, can I have your kids' teeth?
Yeah.
He was being honest about having a blacksmith forge a possible like metal replacement, but it was not amused by that and probably thought Leif was joking.
I was like,
What the hell's a blacksmith? Can I eat that?
I mean,
Like-
it's sentient. I'm assuming it would know what some human things are.
I'm gonna guess not.
Maybe not. It's not that sentient.
I mean, it's sentient enough to know common. It's not sentient enough to like. That's
I
a
don't-
blacksmith.
I don't know the manticore stat, but I think it'd have like a 14 an int for all I know.
That is
Half
a
of that.
blacksmith. It is tasty, but a little sooty. That is a baker, very plump.
Hey, Manicore, you got
Hey,
kids?
Manicore, you got kids? I was waiting for you to add.
Agreed.
No, so and I mentioned this earlier in the show. That was the one thing. Again, I've taken that constructive feedback from previous sessions. I really, really tried hard to not make the Manticore a thing of neutrality. It was just like, I'm gonna hurt you if you try to take my food. Oh, you want to give me food? Okay. Well, you just kick my ass. I'm gonna take food if you're gonna give me food and let me go away because I don't want to die. And then it was like, you want my teeth? no. And it's like, I'm going to kill you if you don't give me your teeth. Well, I guess I got to give you my teeth. Right? Like, no, I'm serious. I mean, but like, honestly, like that was part of it. And it was really weird to be in that position because there's no appeal, right? There's no appeal from the creature. It's just,
Well, I don't want to die, so here, take my teeth.
right. Like, it's really this like very transactional, cold, tense situation that I think was really interesting to play, and I enjoyed it because I think me as a person, I naturally tend to be more empathetic, and so I want there to be a motivation there for some reason. And in this case, I just didn't. I was just like, nope.
And then we had transactional approach.
Motivation is food. So basically, it's Godoruk's long lost godfather, is what it is. Daddy, is that you? No. But seriously, that was kind of it. It was interesting to see all that kind of stuff play out because I swear to goodness you guys were just going to kill this thing off the bat. I did not expect it to go that far. Daddy, I thought you were dead.
I mean, you didn't give a lot. Your motivation was food, but when we had a conversation with it, obviously there had to be more than that. And it's
Sure.
like, oh. But yeah, it was
I mean, I did say the
so,
dragon drove it from its home, which is understandable, right? It's like, nope. How much HP did it have left? It had
Not
5
much.
HP left.
Yeah, like anyone could have killed it.
I did
You
say
could've
that
killed
its
it if
wings
you
were
rolled well.
torn from the shatter, and it was bleeding profusely from all the arrow holes that Oshin put into it.
Yeah.
So,
Bimir could have yelled at it in vicious mockery and killed it.
well, not at his current level, but maybe at level
Yeah.
6.
Yeah,
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 I
he
got
can.
2d4 now.
He's fifth
Oh,
level.
2d4 now. That's right. Let's go.
2d4. Yep.
Oh. Yeah, I mean it was just
It's
it's a
not like I haven't
really
killed things before. With
it's funny though that situation, and I don't know about you guys, but throughout the campaign, I feel like that was actually so far it's been one of the most tense encounters. Which, thinking back on it, is kind of weird because like we fought a dragon, and it really wasn't it wasn't that tense. It was really tense for me fighting you guys as a dragon because I have to be the dragon and try and kill you, and it was scary. But you guys kind of like dispersed, and so that became less scary for me immediately. But despite the fact that this was such an easy target for you guys to take out, after the talking started, it felt like everybody was like on the edge of their seat. You know, it's like a scene in a movie where like you guys, like two opposing factions are talking and they both like have their blades halfway out of their sheaths the whole time they're talking, and there's just that unspoken tension there. I felt it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, you can
Go
talk.
ahead.
They're so courteous.
We can roll for it. I'm kidding. So I would say that it felt probably more tense for Leif in the sense that it was kind of like this is really his only shot to persuade it. But like in terms of like lethality, it definitely felt very low end. Like Leif wasn't really, even when it was up in his face, wasn't concerned about getting even scratched.
Sure.
So I think maybe for Bimir it might have been a little bit different, or just as our party might be a little bit different.
I think like we knew that the Manicore had taken a lot of hits, but it was still fighting up until it landed, you know, and not knowing exactly, like, because there's no way we would know that it has 5 hit points left, right?
Sure.
So in Bimir's mind, this is still a very dangerous situation with a creature that can cause serious harm, as he experienced when he got stabbed in the leg. So I mean, especially considering that half the party was up there right next to it, and you know, basically didn't have any weapons drawn or anything, while it, you know, could very easily bite somebody's head off. You know, it's still a very tense situation from Bimir's point of view, just because, you know, this piece is only as successful as Leif's ability to, talk us into maintain the situation. So, and he seemed like he had a handle on it. So wasn't wasn't too stressed about it, and he didn't think that you'd be able to do a lot of damage, just considering how much we'd already done to it and how relatively little they'd done to us. But still,
maybe it was just tense from my perspective because I was playing the creature, right? Like that's funny. That's actually funny because you guys are like, actually, I was fine, and I'm like, I'm sweating bullets over here because I'm like, oh no, is the creature gonna die? It just wants to get away with food. That's actually a really interesting kind of juxtaposition depending on the perspective, right? That being said, though, as you guys are talking, realistically, if it's the first time that you guys have seen this type of a monstrosity, right? This thing is many times bigger than any of you, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's taller, head's taller, it's fiercely bigger, it's got huge wings, it's got this ginormous tail, a huge head with teeth. Like, I wonder sometimes how seeing these things for the first time would really affect players, right? Who's like, oh, it's a manticore, and they're like, okay, let's go kill the thing, and it's like, actually, that's a big mother. Like, maybe I don't want to rush in there with an axe and go and try and kill it.
I do have 2 points on that. One, we already dealt with a dragon.
True.
So are they similar sized, or is it smaller than the dragon?
It's smaller than a dragon. I mean, it's a large monstrosity, but it's still smaller than a dragon.
So I
think the dragon was huge, right?
Yeah.
The dragon's a huge thing.
So it's smaller than a dragon in terms of like how threatening it is. Probably not as threatening as the dragon, and we were kind of not as strong at the time when we dealt with that. The other thing is also when we were in the cave, I mean, how big were the ogres or whatever? Aren't they fairly large?
Yeah.
The ogres were large too. So
I mean, like we've seen things that are like, in terms of size, it's not as intimidating because we know it's like something that our party can handle. And I mean, even for Cena, I think it's more so the instant reaction of like, hey, it just attacked us, let's deal with it, more so than, oh gosh, I'm scared. I mean, obviously if it was like, I don't know, like something like a higher CR maybe, like obviously that's a little bit more threatening than this manticore. That's, like I said, if we hadn't seen a dragon before and this was the first really big threatening thing we saw, maybe. I mean, but how the dragon even happened, it was more like Goderic was scared of it, Leif was nervously talking to it at first, and then it just kind of happened into a fight, and they just had to react because poison breath in a small room is bad.
Yeah.
So
faded. We aren't afraid of anything. We've eaten grick. I mean, you have. You braved the grick.
I don't know. I think it would have been a more. It probably would have been more. Bimir probably would have been more hesitant if there hadn't been a life at stake. But since there was, basically a life on the line, it's all gung ho for Bimir. It's like let's get this done so that woman doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, because she was stubborn. She didn't want to go anywhere. She's like, no, I'll stay here. You're like, you were just crying for help. Yeah, I know, I'm staying here. You're like, what? You okay, lady? You screw loose?
Yeah.
But
it's like, I don't know how long this confrontation is going to take.
I think we're nearing the end of it.
Well, I know, but
now,
well, yeah,
we'll find out next week or in Saturday.
I mean, from Bimir's point of view, if we give this thing food and it leaves, then it's going to be back. So
that's what you think.
I mean, Leif did say that they can deal with the dragon. He doesn't have to fight. They don't have to fight it, but he can deal with the dragon.
Well, on that note, I'm just going to say if you want to find out what happens to the Manticore and everything, then you got to tune in on Saturday night for another episode of Dungeon Nytes. But I'm going to say thank you so much, Cataract and Gage, for being here tonight. And yeah, all the shameless plugs. Of course, it's what we do. You can go find us, search for Dungeon Nytes on YouTube. You can catch all of the previous sessions. You can also catch the previous sessions of Dungeon Talks 2, where we basically have now had the full cast on. And we're going to continue to do this every Wednesday, where you can come and ask questions about the cast and about how the characters are, anything D&D related, and then stick around for a little bit of an after show where we just still talk more D&D because, yay, it's fun. I actually have a fun thing planned for this week. I think we should try and make an NPC adventurer that will frequent the tavern at some point.
Sweet.
So that's what we're going to do. But anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. I love your faces. We will catch you next time on Dungeon Talks. Bye, everybody.